Welcome to day 2 of the Sly Fox Fabrics and 5 out of 4 Sew Along for the Gloria Peplum and Dress. Thank you for joining us. We had a great day yesterday. We got our pattern prepared, we got our fabric cut out, and today is our first day of assembly. So today we're going to focus on the bodice. We're going to attach our front and back bodices, insert our sleeves, and attach our neck band or binding. So thank you for joining us. Let's get started. Alright, we are ready to begin assembly, and the first step in the tutorial is to assemble the bodice. So we're going to need our front bodice piece, our back bodice piece, and our neck binding. So be sure you have those pieces and we will get started. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is put our fabric right sides together. This is my back bodice piece, right side up. So I'm going to lay my front bodice piece right sides together and line up those shoulder seams just like that, just like that. Come on. If you want, you can clip or pin so you know your fabric is lined up properly. On short runs like this, I don't typically clip, I just kind of hold it in place and put it through the serger. So we're going to do this seam and this seam using a 3/8 inch seam allowance. So I'm going to just pull my serger over. See if I can get that in view. My serger is very loud and noisy. Sorry. And I try to just get it in there so that on mine 3/8 I don't have to really cut any off with my blade. So I just try to get it up there so it's almost at those needles so it feeds through nice. Clip. There's one. Do the other shoulder seam. I probably should have clipped this. It would have been much easier and quicker. And when I'm feeding it through, I want to make sure that I don't really pull or stretch on this fabric. It's very stretchy and you don't want it to stretch while you're stitching. Shoulder seams, and then we're going to repeat for both of our side seams. So we're going to do one side seam and then the other. Okay, so the bodice is just about finished up. We have our shoulder seam, side seam, side seam. Go ahead and turn it right side out. And get this beautiful fabric. It is so soft. What I would suggest doing at this point, I'm going to go try this on, and I am going to just check the fit. Make sure I don't need to take off any length here. Make sure that the side length this way is good, so I'm going to bend over and make sure it's hitting at my natural waist down here where it's going to attach to the skirt, and then also just make sure that the width is good. I don't want a bunch of excess fabric, so I'm going to go try that on. I would suggest you do the same, and then we can attach our neck binding here. Okay, my bodice had a good fit, so now it's time to add our neck binding. I'm going to do the band, the neck band. There's also a tutorial steps for doing the neck binding. So I'm going to do the band. First step is to take our long skinny piece and we're going to sew our short ends together. Just quick and easy. Again, be sure you're not stretching your fabric as you're guiding it through. Okay. So now what you want to do is quarter the band. Basically, what you want to do is fold this wrong sides together in half, so you create a pretty little band on the inside and the outside. Your seam right here is going to be your center back, so you can place a clip there. And then what I do is I stretch it out nice and even, like this. And that's going to give me my center front. I'm hoping this fabric has enough recovery to use for my band. We'll see. And then to find my side quarters, I just match these two up in the center, and then that's going to give me my center point on this side. Fix that fabric just a little bit. Okay. So I have my center back, center front, and then I have, which would kind of be my shoulder seam area, and then I'm going to come over here and get the other shoulder seam, just making sure that those are lined up. That's going to give me true center. So I have my 4 points on my band, quartered perfectly and evenly. And then I have to do the same for my neckline. So I kind of have a crease right here. I can see where I folded my fabric when I cut it. So I know there's my center back. And then can kind of just fold like this. Come here. So here's my center back. That's going to give me my center front by lining those up. So right now I have center back. Oh, straighten that out a little bit. Center front. As you can see, shoulder seams are not going to be true center. So what I do is I line these guys up again. And if it's easier, you can actually clip them together just so it's not so floppy. And then pull it out like this, and then that's going to give me that center point there. And that center point there. Take off those side ones. So when I lay it down, I have my center front, center back, and the two sides. And as you can see, they're just a little bit, probably about almost 2 inches, inch and a half, 2 inches off from the shoulder seam. But that is true quartered, like that. Make sure you can see that. So then what I do is, I get some more light. I get my binding, sorry, my band. Let's try to use the right terminology here. So I have my center back, center front, and then my 2 side points. So I make sure your bodice is right side out, and you're going to do right sides together. So I'm going to come around the back side to kind of lift this up, and I'm going to clip my center back of my band to the center back of the back bodice. Okay, and then I do the same for my front pieces. My center front on my band, center front on my bodice. I remove one clip and then use that one to attach both. Make sure that's focusing on the right spot. And now I have my two side points. So you just want to make sure that this isn't getting twisted. You want to make sure it's laying flat, right sides together, matching up. And then I remove one clip and then use the other to attach them there. Again, on the outside, right sides together, remove one clip. There we go. Okay, so now what we need to do is serge or sew using a stretch stitch. We're going to go along this raw edges and secure those together. You are new to attaching bands or binding. I am by no means a professional, but this is how I do it. So hopefully this helps you. I always put my band on the bottom, and then so I can know for sure that I'm catching my actual bodice piece. Lift up the presser foot and just kind of slip it in. And I'm self-taught, so there may be better ways to do this, but it gets the job done. Basically, when you're attaching your band, you want to make sure that you are not stretching out the actual garment fabric. You want to only stretch your band fabric. So when you're sewing, basically I get it started with a few stitches to hold it in place. Okay, so that is secured, so I know I can remove this. What I do is I kind of give it a gentle tug, because you want it, you don't want to stretch it per se, but the banding is a little bit shorter than the bodice opening, and that's what's going to kind of make it so it doesn't sag around your neck. But again, you're only wanting to stretch it just enough so that the banding is sitting flat against the bodice fabric. So a little slight tension, pulling on that, but not a lot. So I come to my clip and kind of readjust, making sure I'm not twisting. Everything is laying nice and flat. And then once I have that kind of stretched to where I need it, then I just pull this one out. Again, readjust, make sure everything is feeding through evenly. Nothing worse than getting a little misalignment and then having a hole. And I'm really bad about taking off any fabric, so I try to do just a little bit off, so I know that I'm getting a good, going through all 3 layers of this with the serger. Okay, I got to my next clip, so then I can pull that off, and then I kind of stretch it again, make sure everything, I want to make sure I have 2 layers of my band nice and even, and then my bodice fabric nice and even, and I'm stretching that band ever so slightly, and then I just walk it through. Okay, kind of realign. I'm sure some of you do this much faster than me, but I've learned that if I just take my time, I have much better results. So I want to make sure we're almost to the end here, so I always want to make sure that this is going to meet up nice and even. So I want to hold that pretty tight there so that I know we're going to come up to that spot and not have any gaps or lumps or bumps. Sorry if my hands are in the way. Okay, so I have just a tiny bit of fabric here left, so I want to make sure that this is going to line up, and then I go over that just a little bit just to make sure we don't have a hole at that point. And there is our band, and I always just kind of go through and I make sure I don't have any holes or missed spots or any spots where it kind of got pinched. This one looks really good. Sometimes I make little boo-boos, but this one looks really good. So at this point, if you choose, you can top stitch, and be sure on your serger that you either tie your tails. Another thing that I've been doing is I don't know if this is right or wrong, but it works for me and nothing's come undone. I just overlap my tail like this, and then I take it to my sewing machine and I just zigzag over this a couple times to hold it, and then I just clip the excess and it works perfectly. So, and I just don't have the patience to tie my tails. So that's what I do. So tie your tail or attach it, or however you finish that. And then if you'd like, you can top stitch here using your choice. You can use a coordinating thread or a contrast thread, whatever look you're going for. And then from there, I'm going to go check my tutorial, and I believe we do the sleeves next. Our next step is to finish the raw edge of our split sleeve, which is this long straight line here. That is going to be the part that's opening on your arm. So we just want to make sure it has a nice pretty finished edge. What I'm going to do is serge along this whole line. Then I'm going to just fold my fabric under like that, press it, and top stitch. So I'm going to do that on all 4 pieces of the split sleeve. Okay, the raw edges of our split seam sleeves have been finished. So what we're going to do now is overlap the front piece onto the back piece, just overlapping by 1/4 inch. So, and then we are going to stitch 3/4 inch at the top, 2 inches at the bottom to assemble those pieces together. If you prefer a smaller split, you can add more stitching if you don't want as much arm to show, but do at least 3/4 inch at the top and 2 inches at the bottom. Okay, our split sleeves have been attached at the top and the bottom, so now we're going to turn those right sides together. We're going to sew along this seam right here.